won't find the phantom. He finds you.
G'day, everyone, and welcome to Expand the Phantom podcast. Our website is chroniclechamber.com, and you can subscribe to our podcast via YouTube or through your favorite podcast app. My name's Dan, and I'm joined by Stephen and Jermaine. How are you guys? Jermaine, how are you?
Good. Looking forward to tonight. Oh, I really enjoy these comics and news podcasts just because we get to talk about things from the Phantom all around the world. So it's yeah, really do enjoy those.
Absolutely, and I noticed we're still seeing the corner of the Phantom room that you're in. It can't be too... how are you traveling with your progression to a back to a Phantom room, a proper Phantom room?
Well, we went down the path of starting to pack up because we were looking at moving into a bigger house. We've now ditched that idea and we're now going to extend the house. So I'm still going to be having my Phantom stuff around the house because the extension probably won't be finished until this time next year. So there's a corner here for the newborn baby, which she will have. Um, so yeah, so this will be still the Phantom room slash baby room slash studio for probably about another year, and then she'll have her own room.
That is commitment to Phantom collecting, where you're going to add your child to the Phantom collection room.
I was listening to a podcast with Nick Natanui today in an interview, and he was talking about he collects sand shoes, and he was talking about how his two children share a room because he hasn't packed up his room, which was of his sand shoes, and he's got like 500 pairs at one stage. And they were giving him grief about, making his kids share a room. And he goes, no, 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 no. When you're a collector, collectors would understand. And I'm nodding along going, yes, I understand.
Fair enough. How about you, Steve? I'm pleased to see you're out of the car. You're into the house. You seem to be 50-50 car and house these days. How are you down in there in Victoria, mate?
Well, as you can see, I'm wearing the fanny. It's gotten a bit cold down here now that we've ticked over to April, and footy season's in full swing. You guys are still in your t-shirts, but I've had to get the winter stuff on now. Um, but yeah, no, it's all good down here. Yeah, going. Yeah, been out of the car a fair bit now, so I've been enjoying that. The bit of freedom. I've actually, my Phantom room's not as big as Germ's or anything like that, but I get to do the podcast and look over to my left and see my collection. And yeah, you guys are right. In fact, I got a text from my dad today. He was at a swap meet. A couple of three Phantom comics he found. One in the 400s and two in the 500s. He said $5 each, and I said, "Yep, all right, we'll take those." He said there's also someone who was trying to give away his whole collection, was 800 comics, up to 1400, and he wanted a fair bit for it. That's all he said. And I said, yeah, they usually do. I wasn't going to
Yeah.
ask how
Oh,
much because I know I wouldn't be able to afford it. Not
each
this
and
time.
every Phantom collector who's got the hundreds or the thousands of comics from on a run up to the 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, whatever it might be. We all want more than it's probably ever going to be worth, and that's just the nature of the beast. But look, anyway, it's great to be back with you guys. We're here. We're recording very early April to look back at the month of March and all the comics and news. And as you said, Jim, these are always fun podcasts to record. We love the interviews. We love the special podcasts that we have, and we're going to touch base on the Phantom Census later, which was the last podcast that we recorded. But just to look back at a month of progression in stories and comics and news around the world, always a fun one. So as we always do, we're going to start with the newspaper stories and the progress in the dailies and the Sundays. And I guess the exciting thing since we last talked in the dailies is that we're really starting to get involved in this news story, the Spark, we've seen a good 4 or 5 weeks of it since last we spoke. How are you guys finding the daily story?
I was looking over it today, and it's. I'm going to give it an interesting one. We've got Kit and Heloise and Cardia on the beach, and Heloise trying to get Kit to and what's her name? I think said Kit and Cardia together. Um, Picardio's got some demons that she's really battling, and
Doesn't she? Yes.
which makes things really interesting. We've saw it, in an earlier story. I think she was on top of a very high building, and now she's swimming out into a swimming channel. It's all, there's a few things that going on behind the scenes there with Cardia, with her background and with her dad. But also and I think it was in the latest week, we get, what's going on between the three young people, but also we get a little flashes of what's happening with Doji up in the mountain town or mountain city. And that's got no words with it, no text. And that's, there's no dialogue, and there's also no of the square boxes either until right at the end, where Kobji he exclaims, "Oh, what you permitted this?" And one can only assume that they permitted the hit on Jampa. So
that was Savannah, wasn't it?
Savannah was the one that did it, but
Yeah.
one can read into that saying that they allowed it to happen. But I don't know that because there's no text. We actually don't know what they're saying. It's only, Kit's old mentor, exclaiming that how'd you allow this? But as you can see on the screen now, we're seeing the rescue attempt on. It wasn't a rescue attempt; it was actually a proper rescue there on Cardia. So yeah, it's an interesting story. I know there's been comments on Facey about not seeing much of the Phantom, but the way I read the dailies nowadays, being on the internet, I'll probably go for a week and a half without reading it anyway, and so I don't notice it hasn't been 3 weeks, whatever it's been, since Phantom appearances, because I just read it in one hit and read it like a little story.
And the Phantom himself in his suit does appear once a week or thereabouts so far in this story. It like what Germ's got on the screen right now, where Heloise is talking to Mum and Dad back in the Skull Cave.
Mm.
Just noticed he's not wearing his belt there.
Yeah, that was. It took me probably the second time to read it that he didn't have his belt on either, which makes you think like, okay, it makes sense not wearing your belt because you're not on mission. But then if you're going to go down that path, surely not wear his costume also, seeing he's not on mission and he's hanging
Yeah,
around with his wife.
I don't like that because the fans of Phantom, it's Kit Walker's when he's in disguise, or when the Phantom is who he is. He needs to look like the Phantom.
Mm. So it's kind of like, it makes sense for the Phantom not to wear his costume. I mean, not to wear his belt, but then if he's not going to wear his belt, the way I see it is he might as well not wear his costume, but then that kind of flies in the path. So it's that delicate balance of, but he's
Maybe he
not
had a good.
American. He's not American, so he doesn't need to walk around his house loaded and strapped up. So
Just thinking maybe he just had a good roast dinner or something. He just needed a bit more, a bit of room.
undid the belt. So I kind of see. First of all, I enjoyed this part of the storyline where you've got the silence between the monks and the teacher, and then you've got the speaking of Heloise with his parents. I really enjoy that. Now, I have a theory. You talked about, Steve, how you thought that maybe it was they allowed the murder of Jumper. I actually think that what they've done is they've thrown the foreigner, i.e. Kit, and Monju under the bus to take the rap, to take the blame, and that's what is going to cause Kit to have to come back to this, to the Himalayas because to rescue Manju or something like that. So that's what I think that they have allowed.
Yeah, no, I'm going to disagree with that. What about you, Dan? You got any thoughts on the situation?
Yeah, well, I'm really enjoying the storytelling style, particularly this last week or so, where it's every panel, every day seems to be half 1 foot in the Himalayas, half 1 foot in the young people's storyline, whether they're in on the beach or online. No, I'm not overthinking it, to be honest. I'm just enjoying the way it unfolds. It's probably a little bit of a surprise that the Old Man Moz storyline and the prophecy is still so much a part of the Phantom, and the amount of times Diana is actually thinking about, well, if Heloise understood the prophecy or she knew about the prophecy. So probably that was a bit of a surprise that that is still an ongoing thread. But then when I caught myself thinking that, I was like, well, actually, probably that shouldn't be a surprise because um, we know how Tony DePaul operates, and he has a tapestry. If I talk about if I talk about the individual threads being woven in, he's got a complete tapestry of ideas that he's putting together, and we're just seeing it unfold. So I'm enjoying the journey.
It's
Mm.
interesting, watching the two panels together or reading the two panels together. It seems to be a lot, or there is a lot of dialogue, maybe even, over the top dialogue in the young people's drama, and it's really, really juxtaposed by the nothing in the monks. However, when we first start, if you just go back a couple there, Jem, I just noticed this. I hadn't noticed it before, and this could be completely by accident. There's nothing between Kit and Cardia, but there's so much thought bubble in Kabujobi's uh, panel. And then after
Yeah.
that, it becomes a complete opposite. Now, that could just be a happy mistake. I'm looking far too much into it, but just something I noticed then.
No, I think this part of the story I've really enjoyed. I do have to admit, there's been a few people that have made this comment on Facebook about how there's not much Phantom into it. And the way and last podcast we actually talked about, was the origin story a standalone story or is it part of the Spark? So I wonder if that was deliberately added in to kind of help add some Phantom before the story, with Tony DePaul knowing that it was going to be, a 2 to 3 to 4 month story with bare minimum of the Phantom in it. Um, so I wonder if that was a bit of it. It's good to see the Phantom making an appearance on the ninth. I would have liked to seen the Phantom a little bit more, whether, for instance, so if we go back, like here, like Heloise is talking to Diana, it would have been good to kind of see the Phantom in that panel as well, just to kind of like see the Phantom in a few more of these panels, just to kind of, I guess, make it look like, to remind people that it is still a Phantom story.
Maybe this is just very reflective of my own life at the moment, but I have got not twin, but daughters close in age, very similar to the age of the twins. And when they ring mum, I'm often not around, and I don't need to be around for the hour and a half long conversation they have on speakerphone. I'd be a bit like Kit Walker is in this instance, going, you know what? You just keep talking to mum in the communications room. I'm going to go and tidy up in the major treasure room, or just dick around the hall of costumes or whatever it might be, while you get off your chest everything you need to talk to your mum. And I'll pop back in week 9, the same as they have in this random story, just to make an appearance. So I hope my daughters don't listen to this podcast,
I'm
but it
sure they
does seem
don't.
very real life to me.
They're going to be calling you now instead of your wife. Um, just thinking about the title of the story, the spark. Like, we've been thinking, watching this and seeing the kids, interact with each other. You think about, the spark between Kit and Cardi. You think about the spark between Kit and Manju. But now we see, with the monks, could it be the spark that lights a powder keg that gets the mountain city, blown up, or is it the
Yeah.
spark that ignites Kit to, become the Phantom, go fully down that path now? It's there's a lot in
I
a
th
name, I think, and yeah.
Yeah, I think you're very accurate there, Steve. I think it's going to be a spark on a few fronts there, and I think that's going to be interesting how Tony does that. And I also kind of get the feeling that this part of the story is going to end without a lot of questions being asked.
Asked or
Um,
answered.
Answered. Sorry, there's going to be a lot of questions asked, but not many answered.
Yeah.
And I think yeah. So now before we do move on, one of there was a question, like we talked about how the Phantom hasn't appeared and stuff like that for about 2 months. We've done the maths. Now now this isn't not an exclusive list, but I have gone back to a couple of stories where I remember there's been Phantom not appearing much. So a couple that I've found is the Phantom goes to war. The Phantom wasn't in that story for about 4 to 5 weeks. In the Crown Jewels of Korba was another 4 to 5 weeks. The Epidemic, which is a Cybari story, that was 4 to 5 weeks as well. And the Movie Stars, which was another classic Wilson McCoy story, that was 3 weeks. So, and these are all daily stories. So, there's 4 examples of where the Phantom didn't appear for a month. This has been about 2 months, 9 weeks. So this is, from what I understand, from my limited research, this is almost doubled
Mm.
um, some past examples. So it is interesting. A few fans have noticed it. A few fans are a little bit grumpy about it. I think there is some basis for them to be grumpy, but I also think they need to realize that Tony, which he has made mention in the podcast and also in his interview, it's not just the 21st Phantom. It's you know, yeah, it's the Phantom, but it's the Phantom's world, and he is on purpose trying to expand the universe, which I think is a good thing on the overall. But yeah, like I said, I would have liked to seen the Phantom scattered throughout it a bit more.
Yeah, it is an interesting one. I remember last time we talked in the February new comics and news that it was all about an opportunity for Mike Manley to bring in his Judge Parker skills for the drama type of things, and we've seen that through March as well. I agree with you, Jim. I think it's great to see the world building that's going on. Um, to be honest, if I hadn't seen the odd comment on Facebook or whatever, I probably haven't really. It's certainly not something that upsets me that I haven't seen the Phantom for a little while because I'm enjoying the world building with the Phantom's other characters. Yeah, so with the Sunday, we've seen in the last month, we've seen the conclusion. I remember us talking a month ago again, if I reflect back on that podcast again, that we felt that we must be getting close to the conclusion of the Princess of Songhai, and we have seen the end of that in the last month. Now there has been a bit of commentary about it going on too long. I don't agree with that myself. I enjoyed the way it unfolded and the story as a whole. I think, again, I say this so many times when I talk about dailies and Sundays, I'm going to love seeing it produced as a comic book, and being able to read the whole story together. Where do you guys stand on it?
I hadn't noticed it for going too long. Maybe we're just grown accustomed to Tony's storytelling that things go a certain length. To me, it kind of seemed like a short one, but once again,
Yeah.
it's probably my reading habits at the moment that I read in the way that I do.
So I will disagree. I think it did go for too long. I think these 2 panels of the Phantom, using the gun, or the 2 Sundays, I think that was unnecessary. I enjoyed the the twist, I guess you would call it, where the princess was not really a princess. Like I enjoyed that twist, where it was actually just. I don't want to say just a girl, but she
A
wasn't
princess
actually the
of the family.
princess of, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So I enjoyed that twist. I enjoyed this panel, this Sunday here, where it's kind of wraps up. You've got
What date's that one, Joe?
uh,
30th.
the
30th of
30th,
March.
yeah, 30th of March. So I enjoyed this where you've got the retelling of the oath. You've got the respect shown to the general, to the captain, sorry, the Songhai captain who passed away. And then I also enjoyed the bit where you actually see the second Phantom actually utter words, which is the only time you actually see it in the whole Sunday story. So I enjoyed that one. But in my opinion, the previous two were a little bit too long, and there was a couple of other panels that, if I was editing it, and this is no disrespect to the writers, I would have chopped off a couple of the Sundays because I thought it could have just been a little bit tighter, a little bit a couple of weeks, a little bit shorter.
Yeah, see, to be honest, I've got to disagree with that wholeheartedly because the two panels that you've said there that you'd cut, that was the modern Phantom talking to Diana and reflecting on the story and the impact on him. Um, I really liked the difference, and we've seen so many stories with the 21st Phantom relaying something from the Chronicles. I loved the way that Tony DePaul did this in terms of using narrative boxes only for Sundays and strips that were entirely in the historic moment and only bringing the dialogue into the 21st Phantom. And as you just pointed out, it was literally only in the very last panel or the very last day of the story that the historic Phantom spoke and we saw the dialogue. I really loved the way that voice, if you like, played out.
They mentioned we've got the news story, which has got Jeff has got his new title panel, Phantom and Devil. Um, and then, for those who are on YouTube, you can see the last version, which had the second and the 21st Phantom. And this is, I really do enjoy this tradition that Jeff has brought in. Obviously, we've only got one Sunday, so it's hard to make too much of a judgment or too much of a commentary based on one Sunday. We've got the title, The Ungraved. You
I think that
know,
sounds ominous. That's what a cool title. That the bad stuff's going to
Doesn't
happen here.
I wonder, like, and this is purely like, look, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I know I'm going to be wrong, but based on the Ungraved, based on the conversation between the parents and the girl, who the girl seems very grounded to be able to have that conversation and respect and stuff like that. So, I thought that was quite good. But I think it's going to be that her and her cousins are going to find some ungraved burial sites, and that's going to, go off into the story and stuff like that. And I think, yeah, that's kind of where I think we are about to head into this story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the way that
like
oh, sorry.
we're only what is it? One, two, three, four, five panels in, one day into a new story. I love the idea that we're looking at the Phantom and the Phantom's universe through the lens of a modern family who has clearly, well, by their own accounts in the dialogue we're seeing here in the first day of the Ungraved, they've left their roots behind, if you like, but they're still very proud of where they've come from. They want to continue a connection with where they've come from, while at the same time acknowledging it's no longer for them, and they're very happy living in the modern world. So it's we always talk about the Phantom and the challenge of this particular character and this particular universe of having a foot in both universes, if you like, if in terms of the traditional jungle and the modern, 2025 as we record. This looks like a story that's walking that line, and I look forward to seeing where it goes.
Mm.
Yeah, I've just when I read the thing, The Ungraved, I thought you're going to find dead bodies somewhere that they haven't been buried, and yeah, that something bad's happening. But then I thought, oh, I better do a quick Google and see what the dictionary meaning of it, and it's to remove a corpse from a grave, to actually dig one up. So, what type of skeletons are these guys going to be digging up? What's buried in the ground, and what's going to be brought to the surface here in this story?
Mm. Interesting. I guess we'll have to remember what we've kind of talked about, kind of predicted, and then we can see how far off we are next month.
As you said, Germ, we will tune back in for the April comics and news and see where this one went. Let's leave the newspaper stories behind and get into the comics side of things. And we've got a couple of throughs to talk about. 1993 and 1994 have been released since last time we spoke. 1993 is the third part of The Lost Valley, the part three of that called The Sacrifice. It's another one by Phil Mang. It's three stories in a row, or three chapters in a row from Phil Mang, and it's the fourth, I suppose, if you talk about the Phil Mang stories that we saw in the annual as well.
The Sacrifice, the conclusion of Phil Mang's three-part The Lost Valley story, opens with the Phantom and Frida battling a dinosaur and a jilted Roman. Unfortunately for the Roman, his aim was off when he was attacking the Phantom, which caught the unwanted attention of the dinosaur. The Phantom then sees off the dinosaur, and the two, that's the Phantom and Frida, start the long journey back to the Vikings' land. But first they have to take a detour to go see a witch. While this is happening, Frida's brother Sigurd has had a change of heart and now wants to marry Calypso after earlier sentencing her to death. He announces this to his subjects, who all think this is a great idea, and then that's the last we see of them. The witch then scares Frida with predictions of her future, and they continue their way back to the Viking kingdom. Once there, the Phantom gets the Vikings to help him build a type of hot air balloon that he intends on using to fly over the mountain range and away from the Viking Roman land. Of course, Frida doesn't want him to leave, but thanks to her sacrifice, he is finally able to make it back to the snow, where a passing snowmobile rider finds him and lets him know that Diana thinks he's dead and so has gone home. The Phantom makes it home and embraces Diana, who asks him to tell her everything, to which the Phantom, who I think speaks for all of us, when he replies, "Everything? Do you really mean that?" And that is the last thing I want to say about this story, because I want to refrain from commenting on the story, because I was always taught if you haven't got anything nice to say about something, sometimes it's best not to say anything at all.
Look, by the time Steve said the first sentence, which is that it opens with the Phantom and Frida battling a dinosaur and a jilted Roman, and then he talks about the Vikings helping him to build a hot air balloon, and suddenly we're back to the snowmobile riders and Diana going, "Oh well, the Phantom's dead, so I may as well go home." I'm probably. Look, the art was excellent. In many places, I've always enjoyed Phil Mang's art. That's the nice stuff that I have to say about this story.
See, I can't even say the nice thing about the art this time. Like, yes, Phil Mang's artwork is great, but if you go back a number of pages there, Jim, on what you're sharing on the screen, page 4, the second page of the actual story, and Frida's going, "Oh no, he was devoured in an instant." From the words, it sounds like she's upset and showing horror, but the face is just, "Oh no, he was devoured in an instant." Like her Botox is kicked in and she can't express. Having said that, you look at other pages, other panels, and she's quite expressive. But that's something I noticed a little bit. Like sometimes the expressions are really good, but then other times it's just Botox.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Look, I actually gave up on this story the first time I attempted to read it. I forced myself to read it. I really didn't enjoy this story. I don't like fantasy Phantom, so I will say that up front. Griffins and unicorns and love potions and witches, they give magic potions for people to fall in love. That's not my wheelhouse. That's not my Phantom. So,
Dinosaurs and Romans and Vikings.
being in a lost valley that you can only access via going into what do you call it, a whirlpool, but then you can do a hot air balloon to get out of it. Like the whole, it just didn't make sense to me. It was not my favorite. I enjoyed the layout, the art, like some of these layouts, like with some of the panels, the interior panels, the bigger panels. This one here, there was another page here. Where was it? Just trying to, this one here where you've got like the lady, which is big, which kind of gives you an extra panel. So some of the layouts in the panel was quite clever, but and then I didn't like how the fact is that the Phantom's like to them, okay, look, let's make a hot air balloon and then I'll get you out of, here but you don't actually see him getting the Vikings out of the valley. So it's like he's duped the Vikings, and that's just kind of like that's not my Phantom. The Phantom does not dupe people to get them to make something for him so he can get out, so he can save his own skin, but then they don't save, he doesn't save them. Like that didn't the thing that I loved actually the most about this story was actually Frida killing herself to save the Phantom. I actually really enjoy. I know that sounds really like morbid, but I actually enjoyed that element of where, the hot air trip was to me the pinnacle of this story. And I enjoyed some of the storytelling. I like this page here on 31 where you've kind of got the Phantom in the little dots as she's saying goodbye and stuff like that. Like that part of the story I kind of liked, but the rest of it I didn't. What we actually did is seeing, because we were actually talking about this before the podcast, and we were like, well, none of us like this story. So we actually put it out there for some Phantom fans to see if there was anyone else that actually enjoyed the story. We got a fair bit of negative criticism, but we didn't actually get much positive criticism. So I think we will leave it there. We won't read out the exact, because some of it was a lot worse than what we've kind of said. Not sure whether Frew are going to go down this path and produce more stories like this or not, but I kind of hope they don't, because it was not a positive, this story, and I don't think this story has enhanced Felmang's credentials as a Phantom story, and I don't think it has been a good showcase of the stories that Frew has created in the past, and maybe this story should have stayed unpublished.
Yeah, look, I tend to agree. We will touch base on the fan census later. One of the things we're seeing in the early responses of the census is how many people remember the Phantom from being when they were a young person, and that's when they first got in touch with the character and first started reading some stories. I would not like a 10-year-old to be picking up these three-part stories as their first ever Phantom comic and thinking, oh, this is what the Phantom's all about. And I think that the comic should be something that at any given point, well, every comic is someone's first Phantom story, and there will be people who picked one of these three issues up as their first ever Phantom story may not pick up a second, and I'm sorry to say that, but that's where it is, I think.
Using that as a segue to the next free comic,
Yes.
question that I will get you to ask before you do your plot, Steve. The next story element has some fantasy elements. Is that towing the line okay for you, or is that too far over for you?
This
For
one, I
me,
love this
it's
story.
perfect. For
Yeah,
the next one, it's perfect.
it's absolutely perfect. And like this is a reference. As I'm reading it, I remember reading this one when I was a kid, and I liked it then, and I like it now. I don't know about
For
Dan's face there.
So yeah, so I'm the same. This was also a couple of years ago. We did like a, New Year's resolution, grab an old Phantom comic and read it. And this was the one. This is the story that Mikkel Lick actually
Oh, right.
reviewed.
Let's move to through 1994. One of the things we saw in the message from the publisher from 1994 is Dudley doing his own reflections on Felmang's contributions, and particularly some of the difficulties I guess he had with the Kuma story in the Monsters annual. and the fact that he dug up the Castle of Evil by Norman Worker and Hans Lindahl as a potential backup for the annual if the Kerma story didn't get across the line, and he goes into detail, and people can go and read the message from the publisher about the things that needed to be changed in the Kerma story for it to be approved by Kingfisher Syndicate, and get into the Monsters Annual. But it was really instructive, I thought, or really telling that Dudley said, "Well, having had the Castle of Evil as a backup, he now realised that that was something that he wanted to republish." And as Steve said, as Jermaine said, I did too. Long rusted on fans, if you want to use that term, recognise this from back when it was published the first time in 1993 in Australia. And I had the same experience. I really enjoyed. I read it going, oh, I remember reading this one, and it was good to see it again.
While travelling through Germany, the 13th Phantom passes through Zellerstadt, just as a young man by the name of Jacob Grimm has an accident. The Phantom helps him to a doctor, and the two become travelling companions. On their travels, they come across a coach being attacked by wolves. They scare off the wolves, for now, and help the occupants of the coach reach their destination. The young lady's grandmother's house, and my, what great eyes and ears and teeth that grandmother has. Now, has the Phantom, Jacob, and the young lady entered a den of wolves? Not everyone seems as they should be. The moon is full, yet the woods are full of darkness. Can the Phantom and Jacob find the silver lining, or is this the hour of the beast?
Based on what we
Great
already
story.
said, we all enjoyed this story, yeah?
This story works brilliant in black and white, and it's interesting in the message for the publisher.
Yes.
They're talking about color and black and white. There's people saying, "Oh, I want color." Then there's other people saying, "I want black and white." This is the type of story I think if you're publishing it, you go, "Yep, this is working in black and white." Like this page here, page 13, when you've got the grandma, hearing the bat outside and ripping into the stake. I think the Phantom said it was a relief when the how do you say that word? Macabre?
Machiavellian?
No, macabre
Macabre?
meal. Yeah,
Macabre.
Yeah.
yeah. There you go. I actually got that one right. When the macabre meal was finally over, and it's great storytelling in this story, and this is why Norman Walker is one of my all-time Phantom writers.
Yeah, the artwork here is just so dynamic, works so well in black and white. And yeah, going to allude you, I had little notes here to say about the letters arguing for color and black and white. One of the arguments was that kids aren't reading comics because aren't reading black and white comics, and I say yes, they are. My son's Jarrett, my youngest one, is reading the manga comics, and they're in black and white. He's reading One Piece, and he's plowing through them. They're in black and white. So black and white comics do have a place, and this story really, really does highlight the beauty of a black and white comic.
Yeah, I love
100%
this
agree.
three-panel process on page 17, where you
Mm.
see the dead person in the foreground. It's just this was when Hans Lindell was in his peak, and he's able to use that heavy blackness, and it was really good. Now, did
And the
everyone?
different panels too, like you just saw those, the different use of the panels. You saw the triangles. Did you have circles in there? I can't remember. But there's no uniformity to these panels. Like, yes, there's straight edges and all that sort of stuff, but there's you got the arrow pointing, the triangle pointing there. You got the thin rectangular panel. Like it's off.
Yeah,
It keeps you on your game. It adds to the excitement.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, did you when you read it? I'm not sure if you'll probably remember it when you read it this time, but go back to your teenage or however old you were when you were 1993. Did you pick up the fact that she wasn't wearing a glove when you first read
No, I didn't even notice it then either when I read it.
No,
it?
I can't say I did either. It just
Yeah,
does go to show, though, that the creators think about it a lot more than the readers do.
yeah, but it was great, because I remember reading when I first read it, didn't pick it up, and then when I was reading it this time, I was so immersed in it that I'm not picking up because and I think that's probably because I already knew the end of the story. But then I'm like, oh yeah, the glove, yeah, I didn't even pick that up the second time. But I think that's one of the other reasons why I like this story is there's that mysterious element to it as well. There's like you see the wolf in the background, you see the wolf going through the forest. Um, like here's some more interesting panel work which you talked about. The silver bullets. Look, really enjoyed this story. I'm glad Frew went to the hassle of republishing it. I would have preferred if they had published this story in the annual and got rid of the replica, because this story would have been perfect for the monsters themed annual.
See, I never thought of them publishing this and getting rid of the replica because on the record, I like the replica. I would have preferred this in the annual and not Kuma.
Yeah,
See,
and I think same with Dan, but I also think this follows on well from the Gollum story that was also in the annual.
differences at the start. See, I preferred the Kuma story than the Lost Valley story. And I didn't actually like there was problems with the Kuma story, which we've talked about in episode 301, 302, somewhere around there.
I might
Being
be a bit jaded from the fact that we've had 2.5 to 3 months of these Lost Valley / Kuma stories that I'm over. And maybe at the time it would have been okay, but no, I'd rather this story in the annual, I think.
If we had it in the annual, we wouldn't have got such a great cover.
No, and that's a great call. I'm glad you picked up on that, Steve, because we didn't actually talk about the cover for 1993, but the cover for 1994, Will Playden, he's only had 2 or 3 covers for Frew. I really liked the cover for 1994. The if I can hold it up here, the particularly the Phantom. And the fighting of the White Wolf. The Black Wolf, I'm not such a big fan of, to be honest. And the White Wolf's paw is a little bit offish. But the this actual dynamic between the White Wolf and the Phantom, that's really, really cool. And then when you open it up as a wraparound cover, it works really effectively, I think.
Yeah, look, really liking his artwork. He's got that painted style as well, which I think is quite good. Frew are doing a good job at finding some good cover artists. So no, very, very happy with the cover. I think Will's doing a good job. For those interested, I'm not sure if this one's already sold, but for the last cover he actually did put it up on his website to sell. So this will probably go up there as well in case unless someone else has already picked it up. So if you're a connoisseur of original artwork and this takes your fancy, make sure you drop him a message.
Just thinking about the paw there, Dan, you just put my attention to it. It's kind of got some sort of similarities to the old woman's claw, for lack of a better
Yeah.
word. Not
Yes.
quite the same, but kind of that jagged look.
Yeah, I can see that, and perhaps Will Playden. It is, as I said before, the creators think this stuff through a lot more than the readers do. And I looked at that and gone, oh, I don't quite like that. But you might be right. The creator may well be going, I'm going to have this connection here that you know, as a reader, I haven't picked up. So yeah, you're probably entirely right there. Yeah.
All right. So one of the things I do want to make mention is in a couple of the last podcasts, both Stephen and I have made mention about our subscriptions being delayed and the subscriptions actually arriving post the comics arriving in newsagents. This has been a problem for probably about 6 months now. As I said, Stephen's made mention of it and I've made mention of it as well. So to do our due diligence, we actually chatted with Renee. I actually gave Renee a call and just raised this as a concern that I had, and we received similar feedback from some listeners as well. So I thought what we'll do is I'll just quickly let all of you know what the conversation with Renee and what he had told me. I have got permission from him to say this to everyone. So this is just a bit of a peek behind the curtain of what's going on at Fru. So for those who are interested in this, Fru have recently swapped printers. So they've gone from a printer from Sydney to a printer in Melbourne. So what's obviously seeing, for those who don't know, Sydney and Melbourne's city away. So for them to go from Melbourne to Sydney, you're looking at an extra day for Fru to actually get the comics. Sometimes 2 days for Fru to get the comics. Before, when they were printed in Sydney, they were printed just around the corner from them, so they would usually get the comics that same day, which then meant that they had a day to 2 days to get the subscription copies out before they actually come in newsagents. So that might be the reason why, as it was explained by Renee, that's the reason why he thinks it might be the reason why a lot of fans, or some fans, especially over here in WA, where you got to wait an extra day or two anyway, but why some fans are getting their subscription copies generally a day or two later than what they were as per last year. Now, Stephen, you just wanted to make mention of something about how you liked, before we moved on, about how like the Phantom interacts with history.
Yeah, so I like it. I like the historical Phantom when it's done well and when it's able to be entwined in, historical events that are, reasonably famous, or with historical people who are reasonably famous. And the Grimm brothers with their fairy tales, and in this case with, Little Red Riding Hood, you could see how this story could have been the genesis of Little Red Riding Hood, and that appealed to me. I enjoyed that.
The other thing that you made quickly mention of, and we made mention of in the Census podcast, is this story has the Phantom on his trip in Europe doing two Phantom adventures at the same time. So it's like, oh yeah, before I did the Golem story, this happened. So it's kind of like on the same journey, he had two adventures, which makes a lot more sense with the amount of time he spends in Europe than going crisscross from Africa to Europe all the time. So
Yeah,
I
so I
yeah,
have been critical of that sort of stuff, but and as it says, reference the Gollum story. So he's done the Gollum thing. Now he's on his way home. Oh no, he's had another adventure on his way home. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, which does make sense.
yeah, yeah. He's the Phantom. Adventure just follows him everywhere.
Yeah, just like bad
Yeah,
luck follows some people.
Very good. All right. Well, with that said, I think we'll move away from the Fru comics now and out of Australia, and go to some of the comic reviews from around the world now. My understanding is, as at the time of recording, we're pretty much going to cut to Scott from the United States as he reviews the Mad Cave Studios Defenders of the Earth comic issue number 5. That I think is the only one we have for this particular podcast. Look, we are currently and are always looking for reviewers from anywhere who can review comics for us, from Sweden, Finland, France, Italy, any other locations that publish the Phantom. And I've said this already. We're going to talk about the fan census a bit more after we hear from Scott. One of the things, again, even early days in the census, is we've got people who are aware of and who read the Phantom from all over the world. So if you're anywhere in the country, anywhere in the globe, who would like to talk about the Phantom comics that you're reading in your country, and you're listening to this, please get in touch with us, chroniclechamber@gmail.com, so that you may well be someone who can contribute to the podcast as well. So talking about the comics in your country. Anyway, having said that, let's cut to Scott and hear about the latest issues of Defenders of the Earth.
And today we are talking about the Defenders of the Earth issue 5, which just released. This series was on a little bit of a break as the art team caught up to the remaining 4 issues in this series. But we're back in action with the story being written by Dan DiDio, art by Jim Calafiore, colors by Wancho, and letters by Carlos M. Manguel. So massive spoiler warning for this issue. If you've been following along a lot of storylines that have been interconnecting are coming to a head. It's very hard to avoid those spoilers, but we're going to jump right in. Story starts us off strong with Kurt Walker, who is the new Phantom, talking to Crotan in the Skull Cave. So there is a conversation between the two of them that basically comes down to Crotan helped Kurt ascend to the role of the Phantom, after being, kicked out of being the Phantom years and years ago. And in return, Crotan is calling on a favor. He needs the Phantom to take down the Seven Nations, which, as Defenders fans knows, is connected to and where Lothar is from. Currently, his wife runs the Seven Nations. That is Lothar's wife. So as we have this info dump, Jedha walks in, and that is kind of where our story starts. Jedha saw something she shouldn't. Now we're cutting away to Rick and LJ, who are driving towards Mandrake's mansion. They're catching up. They're wondering how everyone's doing, and it is a contentious scene. Explosive fight here. Lothar is yelling at Mandrake, totally unaware of what happened to the Phantom. That's really the topic of discussion, is what has been going on and how Lothar has been kept out of the dark. And so all four of them are all talking amongst themselves, trying to calm things down. Phantom tells Mandrake he is grateful for keeping him alive, even though his essence has been trapped to Mandrake's mansion this whole time. But lo and behold, Mandrake, ever the crafty and masterful magician, has a fix. He imbues Phantom's ring with, the life essence that traps the Phantom in the mansion. And so now, Kit can walk freely as the Phantom once more, but he can never take his ring off, lest he die. So this kind of settles it. They get a note from Rick and LJ that Jedha has contacted them, and she wants them to meet them at a certain falls, the Wombazi Falls. And so Phantom hears this. He's going to go tag along. He's suspicious. You could tell right here, this is kind of one of the things I love about this series. Aside from the beautiful colors we have so far in here, this opening issue already, this beautiful purple. We're going to see a lot of purple this issue, which I love. But I love that, as they're telling him, Phantom's not revealing his cards and dialogue here, but we could see by his face from Califiore that he's listening to this, his head's kind of aside, he's suspicious. And this is something that when you're reading this issue, paying very close attention to facial expressions in here, because they do reveal more of what's going to happen. There's an important scene coming up that I will get into. But the last gift Mandrake bestows the Phantom is a new horse. It is not Hero. It is a different one, a good replacement. Phantom explains how much he missed horseback riding. The three of them travel together. That's Rick, LJ, and Phantom to the falls. They get to the tree line, and then a bullet comes out of the woods and grazes LJ's leg. You can see that right here, just clipping right through. Very action-packed. And what's going on here? The Singh Brotherhood is here. And so in that earlier scene with Crotan and Kurt Walker talking, Kurt mentioned how he got the Singh pirates to bow to his will and become his personal army. He took them to task. And now here they are serving up to Kurt, coming out of the woods, surrounding our Phantom, LJ, and Rick. And here we get this great reveal of Kurt Walker as the Phantom, holding a knife, stepping out of the trees. We have this beautiful cascade of sunlight coming through the trees. I love this stuff, especially when it comes to depictions of the Phantom in the jungle. This cascade of light shining through, the tree line. Some of my favorite shots and some of my favorite art when it comes to the Phantom, and right here is no different. Kurt leaps right into action. They fight. They're battling back and forth. It's an argument between brothers. It's about how Kurt is the older brother, but Kit was the one who became the Phantom, and it's a lot of jealousy there. Kit was the one who chose it because he stood up to the morals that the Phantom, being the Phantom calls for. And so, if you read the original Defenders of the Earth series, the trade paperback was released by Mad Cave Studios, and we reviewed it on the site. But that covered kind of the origins of Kurt Walker in this, universe here, we'll call it. So the two of them are fighting. They're going back and forth. They're fighting over Jedha, and Kurt's kind of teasing Kit, or not teasing, but using it against him that Jedha came to him because she wanted to go off on her own and become the Phantom and be an adventurer. And so they're battling back and forth. It's cool knife fight here, pretty basic handling, but it actually works to the betterment of this issue in the sense that you really get a glimpse of everything going on. It's almost cinematic. It's almost like a widescreen, movie format going down and carrying over. And we have the quick bits when we need to, just to see movement of certain weaponry, like when Kurt decides to pull out a gun on Kit. And so the Brotherhood here, they still have LJ and Rick, at gunpoint. And then, they aim their weapons at Kurt because now's the opportunity to take him on the task. Like, while they were allied, they clearly don't like it. They don't want to be, just lackeys to the Phantom. So they take a crack shot at him. He's, shocked that they betrayed him, which kind of leans to Kurt's ego. He fires back with his gun that he pulled, shoots a whole bunch of them. We can see that here. And then he's about to shoot his own brother. We have this cool 2 panels right here of, Kit Walker staring down the barrel of the gun, but click, that chamber was empty. So Kurt actually went ahead and tried to fire. And so, not giving up, Kurt says, all right, I don't need to kill you. I still have your daughter under my command, and that's good enough to keep you at bay. Which, kind of silly when you think about it. But, that's what he decides to do. One thing I do want to mention for people who have been paying attention in this review so far, the costuming. So Kit Walker is wearing more of the Defenders of the Earth style Phantom costume, whereas Kurt has the more classic looking Phantom outfit. He have the stripes here and everything. So that's just a nice little way they differentiate between the two. Obviously, this is a lighter shade of purple going on here too to help you, see who's who throughout this fight. It's very well done in terms of presenting clear action. So after Kurt runs away, we see the Skullcopter, pretty cool, fly out. And we get this wonderful 2-page spread of Kit Walker leaping up through the trees, all angry and mad that his brother took his daughter, his name, his cave, the Skullcopter. He's going to take Kurt to task. And so he leaps onto the Skullcopter. And this is where, when I was talking about paying attention to facial expressions, this is where this comes into play. So we have, 3 Phantoms here. Here's Jedha, here's Kurt, and here's Kit. And they're having an argument. Kit's trying to come in there. He's got, he's trying to climb in to stop his brother. Jedha takes advantage of the situation and knocks Kurt. And he drops his knife. And so that's very important here. And then the next panel, Kurt is telling his daughter to, be careful, pay attention to your uncle. And this is very key because look at Kurt's face right here. It is horror. It is fear. We don't see this a lot in this series from him, but it's very expressive and emotive. And here's Kurt right here. He's, languishing in pain, but bam, next panel, he knocks Jedha down. And so Kit climbs in. They're, battling, Kurt and Kit again inside the Skullcopter, and this is such a beautiful moment. And it helps what's going to happen here. This helps those previous panels before on a couple pages ago, helps alleviate or, explain away what's happening here. So Kurt is stabbed in the hand and is stabbed into the controls. The helicopter's going to go out of, it's going to crash into this cave wall here right next to the waterfalls. And Kurt is looking in horror. He's like, what have you done, to your own brother? And that look of pure horror on his face, that fear that we saw only moments ago in Kit's face, is now on his brother's. And there's this sense of, why would my brother do this to me? And I think when I first read, I was like, well, that's kind of a cold-blooded move. It's still your brother. But remember a few panels ago where Kurt had no qualms about firing upon Kit. The chamber was empty. That was the only thing that spared Kit's life that time. Helicopter explodes. We see Jedha and Kit diving into the water. And then we get, their reunion on the beach of the waterfall, and this beautiful glory shot of Kit Walker as the Phantom's towering tall. It's comes at the perfect time, and he kind of makes a joke about how he now understands why Jedha hates these waterfalls. And then we cut to the gut punch at the end of the issue. We've had this whole Phantom Focus issue. We're going back to the Seven Nations. Flash Gordon and Lothar are in the chambers of the chieftain for the Seven Nations, waiting for Shakara to show up, who is Lothar's ex-wife. And what do we get? Bam! Kashin, who we haven't seen for several issues, who is still working for Baron Atomics, and apparently he helped facilitate a deal between Princess Castra, Crotan, and Shakara. And they will be working hand in hand with the Seven Nations. And that is our big mic drop finish. And that is Defenders of the Earth, issue 5. We'll have to wait a month for issue 6 to see what happens with the Seven Nations there, but as of right now, it seems like Kurt Walker is no more. We did not see a body, so he's probably still alive somewhere. Just hidden from view. Maybe he'll come back in the next series. It seems like they are teasing a follow-up series from these first 8 issues. So something to look forward to for Defenders fans and Phantom fans.
Defenders.
All right, thank you very much, Scott. And look, that covers the Phantom comics from March of 2025. Let's talk about some of the news, and I have to start with the Phantom Census. I've teased it. I've spoken extensively about it multiple times already on the podcast so far. We're up over a tick over 200 responses to the census as at the time of recording. And we've drawn a number of prizes for random prize draws for people who have responded to it already. We're going to do that every Sunday night as best as we can for a bunch of people who are just volunteering and doing this in our schedules as best we can. Facebook is the place to look if you're looking for where those prizes come out. We've drawn 3 prizes so far. Very excited to have people receive rewards for the time that they've spent telling us about their interactions with the Phantom. It's interesting seeing the results come in. We have our own chats amongst the group as periodically as results change and whatever. But guys, one of the things I wanted to ask you tonight is, what's one question, if you had to pick one question out of the entire census that you're really looking forward to seeing what the results are, what might that be? What's the one that you look for when you go and check out the results as they come in?
For me, it's kind of 2. When did you first become? Yeah, they kind of interrelate to each other. When did you first become aware of the Phantom, and what's your age? Because it's like, I kind of think that a lot of people became a fan when they're younger, but then I'm looking forward to see if I'm right with that. And then I'm looking forward to see if I am right with that, what's the age of the people that are filling out the form? Because I get the feeling that a lot of us became fans when they're younger, like teenager and younger, but we're all old people. And I think that is a problem, and we've kind of missed a generation. And so that's what I'm looking forward to seeing the results, because I'm looking forward to see if I'm right or not.
What do you like most about the Phantom, I think, is what I'm interested in. Why do you keep shelling out your hard earned to read about the Phantom, or to adorn your house with a whole bunch of purple, or a whole bunch of items of a fella dressed in purple who runs around the jungle? Why do you do it? What is it about the Phantom that really speaks to you? So that's the type of thing that I'm keen on hearing.
Probably the thing that interests me right now is what are people wanting from the Phantom in the future? And I think, we've talked any number of times about our own personal preferences about a Phantom TV series or a Phantom movie. We all sort of wish that the Phantom 2 and the Phantom 3 from the Billy Zane franchise might have eventuated. They never did. Could there be another Phantom movie out soon? Next year's 30 years since Billy Zane's movie came out. Could that come out? We've talked about a Netflix series. That's our preference of what people want to see from the Phantom. Is that is that representative of what the rest of the world wants? Looking forward to seeing what the results of that one are. But anyway, look, it's been open for what, 2 weeks now, and we're only very early in the journey. There's probably another 10 to 12 weeks where the census will be open. Really encourage people, if you haven't already jumped on board, chroniclechamber.com/fan-census is where you need to go to fill in and let us know your preferences and who you are as a fandom fan. And as I said earlier, every Sunday night on the Chronicle Chamber page on Facebook, you can check out the live video, and that'll get released to YouTube shortly afterwards to see if you've been a lucky prize winner in the random draw. To thank you for your time involved. Anyway, we'll leave that one where it is. Let's move on to the next part of news, which is the Phantom Collector card series. We've talked about that on the podcast before, but it actually is released very soon, Germ.
For those who have come in late, very quickly, it is a card, so it's like one design card in different finishes. So it might be shiny, black, ice flavor, ice shininess, all these different type of shinies. And then you also get one-on-one sketch cards, which are different artists from around the world, and they, on little cards, draw up a little cool little phantom. We've seen some of them. Some of them feature Defenders of the Earth. Some of them feature the Phantom in different poses, different designs from like past artists like Cy Barry and Anthony Spade. There's some Defenders of the Earth ones. There's some old fruit type of covered ones. So there's quite a lot of cool different designs. Saturday morning cards. They kind of give us little snippets that we can kind of release every podcast. And so the podcast snippet that we're allowed to release now is that they will be releasing t-shirts, and there's also going to be stickers as well. So I think that's kind of cool. I expect we will probably have a date, I reckon, by the next time we do a podcast of when these will come out, and we will hopefully be able to get some to be able to do some videos, do some unveiling, unwrapping things as well, and maybe some reviews, and we'll also have a podcast with the creator of this as well. So I'm not sure if you've seen the Street Fighter ones, Steve. The Street Fighter ones, you have like the two different guys, and so it's actually like two cards in one. And the case, look, it's a beautiful product. I'll probably be buying 3 or 4, and then hopefully get a rare one, a normal one, and a sketch one as well. So, yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it.
I do love a collector card, so hopefully I can get them myself.
Yeah, and they're all like they're in cases, so like they're going to be kept in good condition. So it's not like, my youngest collects Pokemon cards, and I kind of, the collector in me goes, I feel like I'm having an epileptic fit when I see how she handles the cards sometimes, and but you don't have to worry about that because you can drop it, the case can crack, and the card's still okay.
Yeah, look, to be honest, that's probably the part of it that I'm wary of. Like, I don't know. I love the part of the idea of collector cards is that there's 1,000 of them out there, and you manage to keep yours pristine. The idea, this seems like a very grown up card, I suppose, is my point. It's very targeted at collectors. It's very marketed to folk like us, I suppose. Yeah,
I think,
I'm actually less inclined as a result, if I can say that.
I think you raise an interesting point that I think there's going to be a lot of fans that are struggling to probably get their head around the concept. But this concept of the collector card is huge in America, especially with sport, Pokemon, and a lot of other type of things and stuff like that as well. So
You're right. You're absolutely right. I am struggling to get my head around exactly what this means. I don't see it as the collector cards that I liked collecting. These almost feel like original art pieces that are available.
so
You're right.
yeah.
I don't understand it.
I think there will be a market in Australia, but I think the main market will probably be the US, which I think could be a good thing, because we need the Phantom to be popular in the US as well. I think the US and India are two largely untapped markets that, if we want the Phantom to survive, the Phantom needs to be more popular in the US and India. And so I think if
See this
this,
though. Do you see this though as something that is going to bring new fans in, or it is just targeted at rusted on fans?
I think there's going to be probably a larger cross-platform collector base than maybe anything else we've seen, maybe bar the video game.
Really?
And
You
and
actually think there are
that's
people who are not Phantom fans who might pick up these cards?
yeah, this concept at the moment. Now, it might change in 2 months' time. It might change in 6 months' time because the collector market is quite fickle in that. But at the moment, this genre, this concept is very popular in the US collector sphere at the moment. So I do think this will be popular. And then what you might get is oh yeah, the
But
Phantom
did you say there's literally only 1,000 of them?
1,000 in the whole set. So that includes the base set, the special set, and the sketch one-on-one cards. When it comes out, we will get him on the podcast, and you can ask him all those type of questions, and he'll actually be able to show us some of the cards and stuff during the podcast and stuff like that. So it might help for some fans to understand it. And I think a lot of fans are going to probably struggle with the concept. And I think that's okay. And for some fans, you can just buy one, and you might get a base one, you might get a special one, and it will look brilliant in your display cabinet or in your Phantom room. And if you just buy one, that'd be great. For some of the higher end fans, they're going to buy a 5, 10 to try and get a couple of sketch cards or something. And I think for it can tailor for those average fans who just want one, and then for the ones that want to get one of the one of one or the one of the 25s or whatever. It'll be interesting to see how you can do it. So, and I think a lot of the higher end collectors will be interested in these.
The video game, the Phantom video game, is now live and is available across the world. Stephen is fist pumping like you would not believe, because now it's available on all platforms. Digital versions of it are on sale now. The first major patch update has come through. Testing for that is happening at the moment, but it's all live and it's up and it's going and fully playable. Steve, I'm going to cross to you first as our resident gamer. How excited are you that this is now out and available? And I imagine you've clocked it at least twice.
I have clocked it twice. You're absolutely right. Just a couple of corrections on what you said. It's not out on Xbox just yet, but they've got clearance and stuff now, so that's just around the corner. There has been a day one patch which patched up a few things. And the second major patch is just about ready to be released too. I think in the next few days or within this week.
Very good.
Starting off with PlayStation and then off to Switch. And then looking at the bugs list, stuff that I hadn't told him about were on the bug list too. And thought, yes, they're aware of what's going on, and they've gone ahead and fixed it. And unfortunately, it's a thing that happens with games nowadays. You can do all the testing you want in the world, and big kudos for these guys. They're independent company, shoestring. They're doing it all with a handful of people. They've still put up what I think is a quality game. There's bugs in it. All right, let's squash the bugs and let's get back to playing a quality game. I haven't done the proper. I'm going to do a proper review and stuff, but I'm giving it. Even with the bugs in it, most people are giving it a 7. I want to give it an 8. I'm really enjoying it. Things in it like I've mentioned, harken back to video games such as the Ninja Turtles arcade, the Battletoads, Double Dragon. As I was playing this game, I was thinking of the old Nintendo game Punch Out or Super Punch Out or Mike Tyson's Punch Out, depending on which version you had, where you're this little Mac and you're this little boxer, and the controls were simple. Right, you only had 2 buttons. The controls were quite simple, but you had to really master those controls, and you really had to look at the way that your opponent was moving, or there's little cues as to know, right, dodge now, right, hit him with the left, all that sort of stuff. And I find that in the video game, there's this darn brute. If you don't get out of you knock him down, then you've got to get out of the way because as soon as he wakes up, he does this forward roll and will obliterate you. Will just cut you down. When you knock down the Sky Bandit, when she wakes up, bang, she attacks you straight away. And for crying out loud, stay away from people with sharp things like swords and knives because they will cut you down and cut you down in a big way. I also noticed too when playing two player, there was more bugs playing two player than there were just playing by myself. Hopefully they're all squashed, and it's a great playing experience with me and my sons, or even me and my wife. It'd be nice if she played that too. But I can't hype this game up enough.
A lot of the feedback that I've seen, a lot of people talk about how like that has that nostalgia type of feel to playing the game, with the fans, but also with the way that the game plays. So I think, I think if you're expecting, a modern, ultra modern type of game, you'll probably be disappointed. But if you're looking for an arcade type of game, and like what you described, I think you will probably enjoy it a lot more. So,
Yeah, it's not a AAA title, and it doesn't pretend to be.
yeah.
It's a fun arcade side-scrolling beat 'em up game by an indie company who are punching way above their weight, and they're doing a great job.
A lot of the people that I've seen that have done negative reviews, they're coming at it from that AAA title, that 3D, and I think it's like, well, no, 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 you're not you've come across it the wrong way, and that's why your judgment is clouded. So I think you're right. If you come at it from that point of view, I think you will enjoy it a lot more. Also, it's worth making mention that the artist packs are all packed and batches are being sent out. So Australian residents should get theirs probably the week of this podcast being released. And then they're also going to update the web store. And Stephen, I believe there's also going to be an art gallery for showing the original pieces of artwork for May, June as well, which will be kind of cool, which will be in Victoria, Melbourne. So,
As soon as he announces where that's going to be and when, you can best believe that Chronicle Chamber will be represented there, and I'll be
yes.
checking out that little art gallery show.
Yeah. Now you will be doing like a video review of the game, but you
Yes, I've
also,
been. Yep. I'll also asked Jeremy, "Do you want to have a bit of crack at this?" And yeah, he said yeah too. So
yeah.
I've been screen recording different parts of the game so I can have gameplay footage as
As you talk about it.
I
Yep.
talk over it. Yeah.
But one question I had for you, Steve, as someone who's played all the way through, are you satisfied that, is it your Phantom?
Oh
We
yes.
talk about not my Phantom. Does it tick the boxes in terms of being authentic to the Phantom as you want him to be?
Yeah. On the most part, yes. The only issue that I have, and this is very, very minor, is that it's set in the 1930s, which is all fine and dandy, because the Phantom, that's where he came from. But in this era, the Phantom's married and has kids. Now, back in the 1930s, 1940s Phantom, it was Phantom and Dana were, on and off boyfriend, girlfriend. Oh, he doesn't like me anymore. We're going to be engaged, all that sort of stuff. So that is the only negative I can think of that. But Matt Kine being the author of the story, he loves that era, and kudos to him. He's put our modern Phantom with being married with kids into the 1930s and 40s, and that's a minor gripe, but it's still our Phantom. Like it is my hashtag. It's my Phantom.
All right. Well, look, if anyone's listening to this, watching this, who hasn't already gone out and purchased themselves a copy of Art of Play's the Phantom game, you should have by now. It's obviously still available. Get involved. As we continue to move on, we need to talk about Moonstone and the fact that they've released two covers for the Bystander or the Phantom issue #1. Jerm, what can you tell us about that?
All right, so just wanted to make mention, last podcast we talked about this and we raised some potential issues with Diamond. Just a quick update of this for Australian fans. talk to your local comic store about getting it in because it is possible to get in. They can order them now. They're on the pre-orders websites. Talked to my local comic book shop, and he said, "Look, there's no troubles at all about getting them in. Nice and easy to get in, so you'll be able to get those in. You can get your Mad Cave Defenders of the Earth ones in, and you can also get their new series, which are not available for pre-order at this stage, but you'll be able to get them in as well. So the diamond problems at this stage is not going to be a concern for Australian fans.
All right. Well, speaking of Defenders of the Earth, looking ahead to issue number 6, it's looking like we've got new artists, or at least one new. The artist is changing over for at least this issue, it would seem.
Yeah, just for this issue, Sal Velluto and another artist will be sharing the duties for Defenders of the Earth number 6. This was announced in a podcast, which we talked about on our website. I don't know who the other artist is. What will be interesting is Sal Velluto has a different style to Jim Calafiore. So it will be interesting how the story flows with that, and then also the comic having two different artists. I don't know who the second artist is, but it'll be interesting whether they matches Cell or not. Now, in talking to Scott, who is our US comics reviewer, he does a fabulous job with his reviews. He thought that maybe there was going to be a flashback. Don't know if that's the case, but I wonder if the story is going to flow in a way where a different artist is going to make sense. Like, for instance, a part of the story told from a different person's point of view, or something like that, where a different art style is not so jarring. Like we had that in the last Phantom saga, where you had kind of like an old comic style, where you had like in this case, it was a flashback, but the flashback had a different style to it. It'll be interesting to see how that happens. I have talked to the guys at Mad Cave. We may get a sneak peek of the different art styles, and if we do get that, we will show it up on our socials on our website. Otherwise, we will wait until Scott reviews Defenders of the Earth comic number 6, which will be later in April.
Sal Velluto is lots of people would have him as one of their top 3 fandom artists, and has been a fantastic fandom artist over many years. So I, for one, will look forward to seeing his artwork in issue number 6, and we'll see where we go from there. Look, there's other news around other American comics as well. Comics Review. So there's some delays in the upcoming Comics Review stories coming up.
Yeah, look, I'm kind of getting conflicting stories. I get the feeling that we might have seen the end of Comics Review.
That's
Sorry, we
big.
buried the lead there. Sorry, you
Yeah.
think Comics Review is done?
There's my I get the feeling that yes, Comics Review is done because we're now 2 months or 4 months, so 2 issues into 2025, and we haven't seen a comic. I know there was some health with Rick. I can't remember his last name now. Norwood, I think it is.
Yes.
So just reading between the lines, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Comics Review probably ending. We might get 1 or 2 issues, but I think unless someone decides to pick it up, and I think it is a bit of a labor of love. I don't think Rick's becoming rich out of this concept. We might have seen the end of Comics Review. Yeah.
That'd be a real shame because we must be getting close to 400 issues of Comics Review, 370s, 380s, I want to say.
Because it started back in the 90s. So it used to be monthly, and then they did it bi-monthly. So loved by a lot of fans, especially the older school fans. And I'm talking about fans, not just Phantom fans, but older fans because there's Batman in it, there's Spider-Man in it, there's Modesty Blaze, there's Mandrake, there's all the comic strip that you get in newspapers back in the day. They're all represented in this. So it's a very niche type of market.
The other American producer, we've talked about Mad Cave, we've talked about Comics Review. Hermes Press obviously have been very prolific, I suppose. Well, depends on your definition of prolific, if you like, across the last decade or more in America. They have flagged this idea of a Hermes, of a colouring in book. We've talked about that on the podcast before. The articles about it are on our website. Look, I'll put my hand up and say I've pre-ordered it twice now on Amazon both times, and my order has been cancelled twice. I have been able to pre-order it a third time now. I'm really hoping that this time the order is fulfilled. Germ, I know you posted something on chroniclechamber.com and on our socials again earlier this week. What are your thoughts? Are we ever going to see the Hermes Press colouring in book?
My personal opinion is no, we won't. From what I've been able to gather, the pre-orders have been quite low. From what I understand, and I may be incorrect on this one, and if I am, and people are listening to this and can correct us, please do. You know how to contact me. I believe the pre-orders that they are after is the ones that are on their website. Now, the problem with that is buying books from Herms can be quite expensive when it comes to postage, where if you're buying or pre-ordering through your comic book shop, through Amazon, which you made mention, Dan, or even what's the Australian one? Is it Big Pond or Fish Pond?
Opium.
And that other one as well is you don't have to actually pay for postage. Where if you pay for Herms, you do have to pay for postage, and so most people are going to go for the one where you don't have to pay for postage. But I don't think those pre-orders actually kind of count when it comes with Herms. Now, Herms, whether it's the right way to do business or not, at the end of the day, they are a business. They're not going to publish a book that they're not going to sell, because books that are just sitting in a room collecting dust doesn't make them money, and they might be fans, but they do have to make money. And so if they see a book that has low pre-orders, they're not going to print it. Which I kind of do understand. It's frustrating. It's annoying because I really like the concept of the coloring in book, and I really like the concept of the art of the Phantom book, which has been talked about for the past 5, 6, 7 years. And I know there's been a lot of work put into that book. And if that book does get published, it could quite easily be the best Phantom publication ever, if that book ever does get done. And I'm quite confident that that would be the case. Me personally, I do all my pre-orders through my local comic book shop. That's with Comics Review and also with Herms Press and Defenders of the Earth and stuff like that, just purely because they pay for postage and then they give me the thing. But yeah.
Yeah. Will you pick that one up, Steve, if it ever does get published, do you think, the colouring in book?
If it ever eventuates, that's something I would like to get, yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right. You mentioned there, Jerm, about the Comics Review potentially being cancelled. It looks like the Phantom and yearbook series has been cancelled.
Yes, so this concept is very similar to the replica series that free readers get, but they put them in hardcover back. They have articles about comics, the Phantom, and also pop culture, what's happening in that time in Sweden around that time. So they're quite informative. That's finished. So they've done basically, I think it's 21, 22 years of a reprint series. And that has now been cancelled from, I think it's about halfway through 1971.
Yeah. Do you think that will be offset, if you like, by the new digital series that they've got coming out?
I like your segue there, Dan.
Yeah, it's
Thank
a
you.
great segue. I think the digital series, in a sense, they won't actually get more money from it because the yearbook was a hardcover thing that you buy, where the digital series, the way they've got it set up in Sweden is you buy a yearly or a monthly subscription to an app and you get all the titles. So you get the Phantom one, now you get this one, and you get everything else. So you get Pokemon, you get cat magazines, you get dog magazines, you get home improvement magazines, you get everything. So, but what I think is what is great about that is that it's more Phantom content for the digital subscribers, and it's a good way of testing the market because they can track how many people read the digital Phantom comics. And if there's an influx of people either subscribing or an influx of people reading this stuff, they might be able to go, hey, there's something here. But then hopefully King Features can use that data and then maybe they can actually offer that for other people. Where I would like to see this going is I would like to see the Comics Kingdom platform actually offer full-length stories in their digital subscription. At the moment, you can only access the stories via the date. So you have to know that daily story 268 starts on on the 24th of the 1st of 2024, where I would like them to be able to change their layout to be able to actually list the stories. So you can say, I want to read that story. You don't have to find the date. You can click that story and you can read that story. So hopefully what we're going to be seeing is a lot more Phantom access digitally, which I think which we talked about in the Phantom census, which might be able to see more younger fans read the Phantom.
Yeah, no, that makes sense and doesn't sound like it's particularly hard to do. It just takes someone to sit there and do it. So anyway, look, as we move through the rest of the news from March, unfortunately, there has been some sad news over the last 4 weeks in terms of we've lost a couple of Phantom people, internationally, Italian fans particularly, but of recent times, even Australian fans, Fru fans, will know of the artist Angelo Todoro. He has been. It was one of the first artists really to feature in the Phantoms World series, and even featured in a number of regular issues from Fru. Unfortunately, Angelo, a good friend of Salvaludo, Angelo Todoro, has passed in the last couple of weeks. And some really touching stories coming out online, particularly if you go to Salvaludo's, if you're friends with Salvaludo on Facebook or whatever, go to his stories. Yeah, it was touching to see some of the tributes to Angelo.
He wrote a couple of the stories as well, wrote some of the sequel stories for Leaf Fork stories as well. A lot of fans tend to enjoy his stories. He probably drew more Mandrake stories than Phantom stories. Did a lot of Mandrake stories for Telesparta. So yeah.
Hmm. And the other big one, I suppose, less prominent in people's minds, I suppose, because he's not necessarily an artist or an author, as you've just said for Angelo there, but Kjell Steen, the Norwegian, long-time editorial staff in Norway for Team Fantomen, also passed in the last little period of time, and will be missed in the Phantom world.
Been communicating with him probably for a good 20 years. First back in like 2000 on the old Deep Woods forum days. Through him I was able to sort out a Norwegian Phantomet subscription. Quite headstrong when it came to certain aspects of the Phantom, but well respected in the Phantom community and also in the Norwegian comics industry as well. And yeah, so sad to see the death of those people.
Yeah. Headstrong in some matters Phantom. That describes pretty much every Phantom fan I know. All right. Well, RIP and Vale to Angelo Todaro and Kjell Steen. Thank you very much to you gents and everything you ever did for the Phantom. Thank you for your contributions. Look, as we look forward, I suppose we're three unashamed Australian fans, and we're looking forward to the comic convention season as it comes up. There are plenty of comic conventions that are coming up in Australia over the next 6 months or more. If you've got any information about or as new Phantom guests become available in that Australian comic scene, please let us know. We know that the Gold Coast Supernova from in April, it's only about a week and a half after we're recording here, that Alec Trikevsky, Daniel Picciotto and Dean Rankin will all be appearing there, April 12 to April 13. And then, of course, in Sydney, June 21st, 22nd, unfortunately, neither Germ or I or Steve, I don't think you're going to make it either, are you, Steve?
Well, I didn't think I'd be able to. It's my wife's 40th, and when I said that to her, I said, well, why wouldn't you go? So I thought, oh, maybe I do have an in here. But then she realized, oh, how would that look? So for her, she doesn't care, but she realizes it might look bad if, her husband's not around for her 40th. Might look
Well, it
bad to
sounds
other
to me
people.
like you're taking your wife to Sydney for her 40th birthday,
Yeah.
and she might go and have a night on the town while you go to the Lee Falk Memorial Bengala Explorers Club dinner. Yeah, so between the supernovas on the Gold Coast and in Sydney, there's certainly going to be some Phantom stuff going on. Comics Con, as you've just said there, Steve. And look, overseas, towards the end of May, we know that there's some conventions in Sweden as well. The details are on our website. We do try to be as across all the international events as we possibly can, despite the fact that we are all Australians. We consider our international audience. There's some countries in the world that have different views on their international relations. At the moment, we try to be all encompassing as best we possibly can. Look, that's what
Any idea
we're
on
aware
tariffs on comics?
Sorry?
Any idea on tariffs on comics?
Oh, look, I'm just glad that Germ said before that Frew are having trouble with their printers and they've had to move interstate. I'm glad they haven't had to go international because it might cost us more. So, thank you to everybody for tuning in and listening to the podcast this week or to watching us on YouTube. Our website is chroniclechamber.com. We've said that a couple of times, and you can email us on chroniclechamber@gmail.com. We'd be very keen for you to check out the website at the moment, particularly if you are going to the fan census. That is chroniclechamber.com/fan, PHAN -census, SCENSUS. As we've said, we've got a number of random prizes available for people who fill out the census as well. So we'd love to hear from you about your love of the Phantom, how you got involved, what you love about the Phantom, how you are involved with the Phantom, and just let King Features, let all of the creators around the world and the publishers around the world know what we as fans want to see more of. That's probably the predominant way at the moment, but as always, we love to hear your thoughts, your feedback, and your opinions, whether it's through the census, do the census, but also jump on our social media platforms and over at the YouTube channels, comment on the videos as well. You can subscribe to us there or through any of your favorite podcast apps, including the big ones, iTunes or Spotify. Thank you very much, Germ and Steve. It's been a fun Saturday night talking Phantoming with you.
Happy Phantoming.
Happy Phantoming, everyone.
Happy Phantoming, everybody.
Enemies beware, the Phantom's always there, but you won't find the Phantom